You're listening to Soap Dirt, the latest in television entertainment news.
Hey there, GH fans. This is Belinda from Soap Dirt, and we've got an update for you on Haley Pullos' DUI case. That is the actress who used to play Molly Lansing-Davis and played her for years. The actress has been sent to jail, and we have got all the latest on what she did, what her sentence could have been, and how, honestly, she really skated on what potential punishment she could have faced. But first, please click subscribe if you have not. So if you didn't already know it, Haley Pullos admitted to causing a horrifying crash a year ago in April 2023 that severely injured a guy she crashed into head-on while driving the wrong way under the influence on a Pasadena, California freeway. It was in the wee hours of the morning, and prosecutors in the DUI case said her blood alcohol limit was 0.25. That is more than 3 times the legal limit, if you didn't know it. Police reportedly found empty mini, airline-sized bottles of tequila in her car, as well as wrappers for marijuana edibles, and she has been accused of imbibing behind the wheel while driving. She reportedly crashed into a parked car, didn't stop at that point, kept driving, entered the Pasadena freeway going the wrong way, was traveling at speed, and crashed into an oncoming car doing about 60. Their cars were in pieces. They were in ruins. The man that she hit, Courtney Wilder, 23 years old, was taken to the hospital in critical condition and has required so far several surgeries. Meanwhile, firefighters had to cut her out of her own car with the jaws of life. Witnesses on scene alleged she was combative with first responders, raging at them about touching her $400 effing shirt while they were trying to help her out. And she was so reportedly combative at the hospital, where they were treating what turned out to be relatively minor injuries, that they had to sedate her. Pullos then released a statement saying she'd be off GH temporarily while recovering from a car accident. That's what she called it. She didn't admit to the DUI, which to me is not a car accident. That's an on purpose. When you get into the car drunk, that's my way of seeing it. And I think that's the way of anybody who's been affected by a drunk driver sees it. And she did not confirm it, admit to it, anything until the news broke. I think it was TMZ that might have broken the story. Then her dad took her, checked her into a fancy rehab place up in Malibu, very much a spa type setting. In case you didn't know it, in California, time in rehab can substitute day for day for jail time. I spoke to a California DUI lawyer about this. I will put a link to that video where I spoke to him to discuss consequences for this type of accident, legal strategies, things like that. He told me at the time, you can't litigate a case like that because of the obvious, evidence against her. And he said you have to mitigate, meaning you have to try and lessen the punishment. That's all you can do. And it sounds like her lawyer did a pretty darn good job. She was facing 2 DUI charges with aggravating circumstances plus a hit and run charge. The aggravating circumstances are what they call it when you cause grievous bodily injury to someone while you're operating a vehicle under the influence. Each of those aggravating circumstance DUIs could have earned her 3 years in prison. So she was facing 6 years, just by the way. Initially, she pled not guilty. And in the meantime, the man she hit and allegedly nearly killed filed a civil suit against her in which he called her actions despicable, mentioned her raging at first responders and attacking and abusing people that were trying to help her. Now, we're a year later. She's been in court a couple of times and changed her plea after her attorneys orchestrated a deal with prosecutors. She pled no contest, which the judge explained in court is the same thing as a guilty plea. And she said she understood that. It's saying that I'm not going to fight the charges. It's you saying you're guilty without having to say I'm guilty. That's what a no contest is, essentially. They immediately took her into custody, arrested her at the court proceeding, slapping her in cuffs, taking her off to jail. That happened Monday, April 29th. Haley Pullos is due back in court at the end of her 90-day jail stay on July 29th for further sentencing. She was also ordered to pay about $8,200 to the man whose car she struck to cover damages to his vehicle. Looks like it was totaled. And she also has to pay damages for the vehicle she struck in the hit and run, although prosecutors didn't push forward with that charge, her having to recompense that person let you know, there was really no way to fight that either. And she's going to lose her driver's license for a year. So after it was announced she was going to have 3 months in jail when she could have had 6 years in jail, her TV mom, Nancy Lee Grahn, tweeted this: "As Haley's TV mom, I can tell some truths about her, as I've loved her since she was a little girl. She made a huge mistake, owns it, knows it, and has spent the last year doing, all caps, everything imaginable to take responsibility for it. It's not that I oppose jail, it's that I oppose this jail." So she thinks, obviously, Haley shouldn't be going to jail. I want to mention this. She said Haley is doing everything imaginable to take responsibility, but this was the response filed by her attorney to the civil suit of the young man that she struck, who was terribly injured, who had to be taken to the hospital and into emergency surgery, and who, according to his civil suit, is facing lifelong complications from these injuries. Okay? Through her lawyer, Pullos, quote, denies generally and specifically each and every allegation contained in the lawsuit. So she's saying it's all false. She didn't hit him. She wasn't driving drunk. She didn't run into him. She's saying all that, even though the deal in court says otherwise in the criminal case. And, quote, the damages alleged in the suit occurred and were proximately caused by either the sole negligent and or intentional conduct of plaintiff. She is saying what happened to him was his own fault. This man... Her lawyers are blaming the man who was driving down the road, the correct side of the road at an appropriate speed limit, for the accident that hurt him so badly he had to have multiple surgeries. That's what that civil suit response says. That, to me, isn't taking responsibility. Her attorney is not only asking the judge to drop the civil suit entirely, but wants her victim to pay her legal fees. I am not quite certain how doing that to the person that you ran into and grievously harmed is accepting responsibility. I'm just not. Maybe you guys can explain it to me in the comments. That doesn't seem like taking responsibility. Now, obviously, that's a legal strategy by her lawyers to try and avoid paying restitution for the harm caused to this young man. It's a very typical lawyer legal move. But if you are truly trying to take responsibility for your actions, that doesn't seem like what you're doing, right? And I say this as someone who knows that DUI drivers ruin lives. My nephew nearly lost his leg to a young woman driving drunk, about her age, and the after effects of his injuries nearly ruined his life. Took 10 years away from him, no doubt, because of what happened. My mother-in-law and my husband were in a car together, struck head on by a DUI driver, and both suffered substantial injuries. I have a friend from college, a sorority sister whose son was killed by a drunk driver. I don't have a lot of sympathy for people that get into the car drunk. And what I consider taking responsibility, it's something else. So yeah, I understand legal posturing that her attorney is doing, but I just know personally how horribly and irrevocably that driving drunk affects the lives of others that you harm. Please, please, people, don't drink and drive. Not ever. Not even if you think there's a chance that you're tipsy. Don't drink, and definitely don't sit behind the wheel of a car drinking, Haley Pullos was remanded to the Century Regional Detention Facility in Linwood, California. This jail has played host to some other celebrity offenders over the years, including Paris Hilton, Lindsay Lohan, and Hollywood Madam Heidi Fleiss. It's got a 1.7-star rating on Yelp compared to the nearly 5-star rating for the fancy rehab she's been staying in. And I'm also very interested to see if she actually stays the whole 90 days that she was sentenced to, because Lindsay Lohan was sentenced to like 30 days for a probation violation and only spent a day of that 30-day sentence in there. Paris Hilton was supposed to spend 45 days for a DUI, and she spent 3 days in and then was released, but then she was flaunting her early release and was caught on camera by paparazzi, and the judge slapped her back into jail to serve more time. I don't know if these cases have made it where they are less likely to give a celebrity an easy pass, or, we'll see. Reportedly, nonviolent offenders typically serve only about 10% of their sentence in overcrowded California jails. So I will update you when she's released. And again, I'd be surprised if she served the whole 90 days. for now. I do not expect her back at General Hospital. I think it might be a PR nightmare. Mothers Against Drunk Driving, people like that, don't have a lot of sense of humor about people driving 3 times the legal limit and nearly killing someone and then trying to blame it on them and say that they're at fault for their own injuries. They have gone through 3 Mollys since she left over this DUI incident, and the latest one seems to be sticking. We'll see how it goes. Subscribe if you haven't. Drop your comments. Definitely come back soon. As always, this is Belinda from Soap Dirt. Please don't drink and drive.
Thank you for being a loyal listener. Follow us wherever you get your podcast, because you don't want to miss the next episode. Soap Dirt is on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more.